It is when Paul called me and asked me to come down here. I was excited because this literally is one of my favorite tracks in the world. A lot of people are surprised by that, with it being all bumpy. But the history of this circuit is really second to none. And it's a racetrack that offers, so many challenges. It has, it's an old school racetrack. You make a mistake here, it can cost you. You've got great overtaking areas, some high speed areas, and of course the bumps, which is always a challenge for us physically. I was talking with a gentleman earlier today, and one of the things a lot of people don't know is that for a lot of the teams, after the 12-hour race, you stay here. And run again on Monday, because if you can run 24 hours at Sebring, usually LeMans is a whole lot easier, no brainer. But yeah, God, 1990 was the first time I ran here. I didn't win it 9 times. I won it 8. So, which is, I know, really. Well, it's funny because I'm good friends with Tom Christensen, who, of course, famous, Audi guy, won Le Mans. And every time I see him, I remind him I've got more wins here than he does. He wanted that record bad. But ran 20 straight years here, podium 12 and won at 8. And it's an interesting thing. Yeah, well, winning overall was nice, but have any of you guys done multi-class racing before? All right, so if you've been in the fast, category, it's easy because everybody's in front of you. When you're in the lower category cars, it's more challenging because you have the prototypes making last-minute dive bomb moves on you. You're watching behind. You're watching forward. Far more fatiguing. And one of my favorite race car driver stories is in 2009, we won Le Mans with Corvette. And that year, Peugeot won. And so the press room at Le Mans is ridiculous. There's 500-600 people in there, and they're talking to all the Peugeot guys. And then they're like, okay, well, let's bring up, GT1 and GT2. And we get up there, and literally 3/4 of the press walks out. And any of you guys ever hear of Mika Salo? He was a Ferrari driver, ex-F1 guy, really cool guy. And he grabs the mic before everybody's out. And he's like, you know what? This is fucking bullshit because we worked every bit as hard as those guys did, right? And I'm like, you know what? He's right. And if you know Mika, that's like just saying, yeah, it's nice weather. But so if you do come out here for the 12 hours, we will love seeing the prototypes and all that kind of stuff. But the battles that you're going to see in the GT classes is going to be pretty epic. Racing right now has been with balance of performance and all that kind of stuff, they've really brought everybody a whole lot closer together, which I'm not sure I like. I started racing sports cars early 90s, and we were filling the place in the early 90s. But Sebring is special, and I think, what Paul has done here, creating this club, is, that's why I'm down here. This place is one of the most special racetracks, in the world. If you are a sports car driver, I would put this above Daytona myself as what races do you want to win? Well, you want to win Le Mans. Of course, that is the big one. But in the States, it is Sebring. The history of this place, the number of, legends that have been here. It is great memories. Have any of you guys driven the 12 hours before? Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it? It is. I was sharing with another guy. So I've been doing this a long time, and it'd be the funniest thing because back in the ALMS days, this was our first race. Remember, it used to be 2 sports car series. So we didn't do Daytona. This would be the first race. And if you start the race, it's great. Half the time you start, half the time you don't. I remember, and it was probably about 06 or 07, and I'm second in the car. I think it was Magnussen started. Might have been Ron. But I'm up on pit wall, and I see the car coming down pit lane. It's a pretty cool, intense moment, right? And I'm like, holy shit, man, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I'm like all nervous and all that kind of stuff. And then you get out on the racetrack and you're like, you're so stupid. You know, I mean, this place is just home. And it's interesting the kind of stuff that goes, you know, through your mind when you're in an event like that, the challenges, the fights. I was sharing with a buddy of mine earlier today, when I joined General Motors, I'd already won here several times and won LeMans and all that kind of stuff. I joined General Motors in 2001 and got the bet. Do any of you guys know who Doug Feehan is? Doug Feehan, pretty big name in motorsports. He's a program manager for Corvette and all that kind of stuff. And I was joining the team. And that was actually, I'll talk about that race a little bit, because my first race with General Motors was 2001 Daytona. And it was myself, Ron Fellows, Chris Neifel, and Frank Freon in one car. The other car was Andy Pilgrim, Kelly Collins, Dale Earnhardt, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. And so it was really kind of cool being in that whole environment. And but Doug took me aside before the start of the race, and he's like, listen, we know you're quick. Your job is 3 things. And I've kept this through my, you know, in my mind for every race that I go into. Your job is 3 things. Don't hit anybody. Don't break anything, and stay on the racetrack. And it's funny because we all can get caught up in little arguments and stuff out on the racetrack that wind up ruining our day. You know, on a day like this, the way I always look at it, you know, if there's no pretty girl or paycheck, you know, or trophy, how big a risk do you want to take? You know, so when you're out there, you know, it's always good to leave a little bit of a margin. But it was a really interesting thing at Daytona, because Dale Earnhardt Sr. was a really cool guy and very open. He wanted to learn road racing, and he's the only guy who ever called me Rusty. Believe it or not, I used to have red hair. And but he'd be like, you know, Rusty, you see me doing anything out there I can do better, you just let me know. And I'm like, all right, okay, Dale, whatever. And it was a really interesting thing. You know, sports car racing and physics dictate that if I come out of a corner faster than you, by the end of the straightaway, I should be faster than you. But it's interesting because all of us, myself and Ron and Andy, whatever, we'd come out onto the oval, into Oval 1, faster than both the Earnhardts. But by the time we got to the bus stop, they were quicker. Okay? Didn't make sense. So during the race, I come up and we're going to lap, you know, the 4-car in which Earnhardt is driving. And rather than go by him, I'm like, I'm going to follow him for a lap. And so followed and saw what he was doing, what tricks he was using to be faster. But I remember coming out of the bus stop one time, and I'm like 2 feet off of Big E's bumper. And we're coming down, we're coming off Oval 4. We actually got to the rev limiter, and there's like this little voice in my head that's going, yo man, you're drafted with Big E. Which, you know, you talk about great memories, rocking Sure Equity. That was certainly one of them. But yeah, no, I mean, I had out of the, I think the 10 years, you know, I raced Corvette here, you know, won 4 times with them. Might have been 5, I don't know, but always by being smart. You know, when you're out there, we're all generally competitive by nature. But you know, hopefully you guys start to use some data. You can get a fast guy in your car so you can copy him and all that kind of stuff. But
what were they doing different than you were to get to the bus stop now?
Oh, you know, great question. The question is, what were they doing different? Okay, because what we would do is we would come out on the oval next to the wall and slowly bring it down maybe to the middle, you know, but never all the way to the bottom. They'd come and they'd go right to the bottom. So yeah, and it was shorter distance. Yeah, worth you know what? But it's kind of like if you run Daytona. Anybody here run Daytona? You know, you get down on that line on the bottom, you know, and I'm always fearful that if something goes wrong, I'm going to clobber that wall. So I always felt a little bit closer being, or safer being close to the wall. But yeah, no, down low is where you need it to be. So are there any questions about this racetrack or other stuff?
One more. When you were running Sebring back in the day, that was when they had the old hairpin.
Correct.
How disappointed were you when they...
Huge. I was hugely disappointed.